McDonald's is more than a restaurant, it's a global phenomenon. With over 40,000 locations in more than 100 countries, its golden arches are a near-universal symbol of modernity and globalization. But that presence is not absolute. In nearly 120 other nations, those arches are conspicuously absent. And this void is never an accident. It is a deliberate footprint, shaped by powerful, underlying forces. In some cases, it's a story of geopolitics and closed doors. Nations like Iran and North Korea, isolated by international sanctions and ideological walls, effectively lock out not just a company, but a symbol of the West. In others, it's a matter of economic reality. Complex supply chains for consistent beef, fries, and buns simply cannot be built in regions grappling with instability or poverty. The local economy cannot support its price point, making the business model unviable. And sometimes, the absence is an act of cultural preservation. Countries like Bhutan and Bolivia consciously champion their own culinary traditions, viewing the burger not as a convenience, but as a threat to their national identity and heritage. Even where McDonald's exists, its presence is fragile. It can become a proxy in global conflicts, as we've seen with boycotts erupting over political stances taken by franchises thousands of miles away. So, the map of McDonald's locations is far more than a corporate chart. It is a unique lens through which to view the world, revealing the stark lines of politics, the fragility of economies, and the enduring power of cultural pride.
The story of McDonald's global expansion is about far more than fast food. It's about the export of an idea. Beginning in earnest in the 1970s, the company didn't just build restaurants, it planted flags. And those golden arches became a powerful, dual-edged symbol for the era of globalization. For a generation, they represented a thrilling modernity and a tangible connection to the West. To walk into that bright, clean, efficiently run space was to step into a future that had been promised by American television and film. It was a ritual of belonging to a global community, a place where a teenager in Moscow or Beijing could feel, for a moment, just like a teenager in New York. It was consistency in a chaotic world. The same taste, the same experience, a familiar landmark in an unfamiliar city. This was the promise of globalization: access, familiarity, and a shared consumer culture. But every symbol casts a shadow, and for many, the shadow of those arches was long and ominous. Critics saw not cultural connection, but cultural imperialism. They saw the homogenization of the world's diverse palates, the erosion of local culinary traditions that had been passed down for centuries. A family meal was being replaced by a corporate product. The unique character of a city's foodscape was risked being flattened into a bland, predictable uniformity. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was the visible face of American economic and cultural power, and to many, it felt less like an invitation and more like an imposition. This fundamental tension is why the arrival of McDonald's was never a simple corporate transaction. It was a profound political and cultural event. A government's decision to welcome it in was a signal to the world that it was open for business, aligning itself with Western capitalism. Conversely, to reject it was a powerful act of defiance, a statement of ideological purity, economic protectionism, or a fierce commitment to preserving national identity against what was seen as a corrosive foreign influence. So, the global map of McDonald's is not a simple record of successful business ventures. It is a living document of the world's complex and often contradictory feelings about American influence, economic integration, and the price of modernity. The presence of those arches tells one story of aspiration and access. But their absence tells another, often more powerful, story of resistance and identity. While many nations have never had a McDonald's, there's a more dramatic story to be told. The story of countries that had the golden arches, only to see them vanish. These aren't tales of failed business ventures, but of powerful political, economic, and cultural forces that can even topple a global giant. Take Bolivia, which made a conscious cultural choice. McDonald's operated in the country for a decade, but it never truly took root. It wasn't just a matter of competition, it was a matter of identity. The Bolivian people, from bustling cities to rural towns, overwhelmingly preferred their own rich culinary heritage, hearty salteñas, flavorful anticuchos, and vast arrays of traditional street food. In 2002, the company closed its final locations. This was a quiet but powerful rejection of cultural homogenization, a nation voting with its palate to preserve its own unique flavors. Then there is the story of economic rupture, perfectly illustrated by Iceland. Here, McDonald's was a popular fixture, but the devastating 2008 financial crisis collapsed the national currency, the krona. Suddenly, the entire McDonald's business model, which relied on importing every single ingredient, from the frozen beef patties to the special sauce and pickles, became astronomically expensive. The company faced an impossible choice: drastically raise prices for a now impoverished public, or leave. In 2009, they left. It was a stark lesson that even the most globalized brands are fragile when faced with the harsh reality of a broken local economy. But the most politically charged expulsion came from Russia. For over 30 years, since its iconic 1990 opening in Pushkin Square, a powerful symbol of the end of the Cold War, McDonald's was woven into the fabric of Russian urban life. It was more than a restaurant. It was an institution, but its presence was entirely conditional on geopolitical stability. Following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, McDonald's made a landmark decision. It would not operate in a nation engaging in such a conflict. It was a values-driven exit, but the void was instantly filled. The Russian government swiftly seized the assets and rebranded the entire operation under a new, nationalistic identity. Vykosnoye Tochka, tasty and that's it. This wasn't just a closure, it was a hostile takeover, demonstrating how a symbol of the West can be abruptly nationalized and turned into a symbol of patriotic resistance. These stories prove that the presence of McDonald's is never permanent. It can be undone by cultural pride, economic catastrophe, or the swift, sharp acts of geopolitics. The most telling part of the McDonald's map isn't where it is, or even where it was, but where it has never been. These blank spaces are not oversights. They are deliberate, hard lines drawn by ideology, conflict, and cold economic calculus. Consider the wall of geopolitics. In a country like Iran, the absence of McDonald's is a direct reflection of its decades-long, frozen conflict with the United States. American corporate culture, especially one as potent as this, is seen as an unwelcome invader, a soft power tool of a geopolitical adversary. Sanctions and deep-seated political animosity have built a wall far more effective than any physical barrier, keeping the golden arches out entirely. Then there is the case of absolute ideological control, exemplified by North Korea. Here, the regime's philosophy of juche, or self-reliance, mandates a complete ban on foreign cultural and corporate influence. A McDonald's would represent a catastrophic breach in the information barrier the state has so carefully constructed. It would be more than a restaurant. It would be a portal to the outside world, offering not just burgers, but a tangible, seductive glimpse of a different way of life. That is a threat the regime will never allow. In nations like Afghanistan, the barrier is a combination of chronic instability and the collateral damage of international sanctions. The logistical nightmare of establishing a secure, consistent supply chain in a war-torn region is immense. How do you guarantee the safe transport of beef and buns? Who is your target market when the economy is in ruins? Here, the absence of McDonald's is a stark indicator of a state that has been largely ungovernable for decades, making it impossible for any global franchise to plant a flag. But not every absence is a grand political statement. For many smaller nations, like North Macedonia or Barbados, the decision is purely one of market viability. The corporate machinery of McDonald's requires a certain population density, tourist traffic, and economic threshold to justify the massive investment in supply chains and real estate. In these places, it's not that they don't want it. It's that the cold, hard numbers on a spreadsheet in Oak Brook, Illinois, simply don't add up. The market is too small. Their absence is a quiet testament to the fact that even the most expansive globalism has its financial limits. So, these blank spaces on the map tell a multifaceted story. They are symbols of defiance, monuments to isolation, symptoms of conflict, and, sometimes, just a simple business decision. They remind us that globalization is not an inevitable, all-consuming force, but a selective one, filtered through the rigid sieves of politics, ideology, and profit. The influence of McDonald's extends far beyond its restaurants. It has infiltrated the worlds of high finance and international relations, becoming an unlikely tool for measuring global stability and economic truth. Consider the famous Big Mac Index. Created by The Economist magazine as a lighthearted guide, it has evolved into a surprisingly potent and widely used tool in economics, often called Burgernomics. The concept is elegantly simple. Since a Big Mac is virtually the same product in every country, its price in different currencies should reflect the true purchasing power of those currencies. If a Big Mac costs $5.50 in the US but the equivalent of $2.50 in another country, the theory suggests that the latter's currency is undervalued. This index cuts through complex economic data, offering journalists, analysts, and even the general public a tangible, relatable way to understand abstract concepts like purchasing power parity and exchange rate imbalances. It's a testament to the brand's global uniformity that a burger can be used as a universal economic benchmark. This idea of McDonald's as a barometer for global integration gave rise to an even more ambitious, though ultimately flawed, concept: the Golden Arches theory of conflict prevention. This theory posited that no two countries that both had a McDonald's would ever go to war with each other. The logic was that a nation with a McDonald's had reached a level of economic development, a thriving middle class, and was integrated into the global capitalist system. Such countries, the theory argued, would have too much to lose, too many economic ties and too much stability at risk, to engage in a costly war with a similarly developed nation. For a time, it seemed to hold. But history, of course, is messy. The theory was spectacularly disproven. The NATO bombing of Serbia in 1999, a country that had hosted McDonald's for years, was an early crack. But the most definitive refutation came with the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Both nations had long hosted the franchise. The war proved that while economic integration is a powerful force, it is not a foolproof deterrent against deep-seated nationalism, historical grievances, and the ambitions of authoritarian leaders. The presence of a fast food chain could not, in the end, prevent the return of ancient horrors. The Golden Arches were not a shield against war, but merely a sign of a certain economic development, a development that, tragically, does not always guarantee peace. So, what does it mean when a country has no McDonald's? It is never an accident of geography or a simple gap in the market. It is a deliberate signature on the document of global relations. The map of McDonald's is a proxy map for the world's political and economic fault lines. Its presence signals integration, a nation plugging into the global capitalist network. But its absence is a far more powerful statement. It is a declaration of ideological purity, a testament to economic self-preservation, or a bold act of cultural defiance. It reminds us that the flow of globalization is not a relentless tide. It is a contested, negotiated, and often resisted force. A nation's menu is a reflection of its soul, its priorities, its alliances, and its struggles. The story of the Big Mac is, therefore, not a story about beef and bread. It is a story about power. And sometimes, the most powerful statement a nation can make is to simply say, "Not on our menu."